Welcome again to the fourth session in our AUT PD series. This one will be focusing on the Early Career Awards. I've got a lovely photo here from a recent award ceremony of two of our early career citation awardees from last year. Got Paris Lithgow-Gordon and Dr. Mercedez Hinchcliff, who's also joined us here today as a guest presenter. So look forward to hearing more from her soon. So it's been fantastic to see all of the state-based award ceremonies happening and everyone really getting into the celebrations of these fantastic achievements of these educators. So before we begin, I'd just like to do a quick acknowledgement of country. So we're all dialing in from various lands, but on behalf of those present, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we're all dialing in from, and I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to pay my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia and hope that the path towards reconciliation continues to be shared and embraced. So moving on to the AUT team. So as I said, normally these sessions are run by, chaired by Professor Ange Carbone. She's unfortunately unwell today, but I'm happy to step in. And we've got Miss Angeline Sims. So we've recently had a change in manager. Luana left us last week and Angeline is officially on her first day of the new job today. So we're really happy to have Angeline's experience back in the team. She spent several years as the awards manager, so she knows this program very well. Yeah, so fantastic to have her here today, and she'll be able to help me out with some questions, I'm sure. And then myself, I'm the awards coordinator and I work part-time in the team. So today's session is really focused on this early career award category. So I'll just give you a brief overview of how you might be applying for the award within this category. Then we'll hear some advice from an assessor on how to write a successful early career award nomination. And then we've got two guest presenters who've received the awards to share their advice on crafting a nomination and any tips and advice on for prospective nominees on how they could make that process easier for them, followed by a Q&A and next steps. So firstly, how can I apply for an early career award? So nominees can apply for this award category as part of two different awards: the Citation for Outstanding Contribution to Student Learning and the Awards for Teaching Excellence. I'll go through the differences in these two award categories later so you can get a better grasp on which one is best for you to apply for. In terms of eligibility, so nominees have to have no more than 5 years experience in teaching in higher educational institutions. So then you can apply for this under this award category. So that is the start date from your teaching to the time of submission, which this year the submissions are in August 2024. So roughly August 2019 to August 2024. There is potential if you've had interruptions due to unemployment, parental leave, medical conditions. That's not included in this calculation period. So if you've got a particular case that you think it's quite close and you're not sure, please feel free to contact the awards team. We're happy to look into it for you and confirm whether you're eligible. So the early career nominees need to provide evidence that they have positively impacted on student learning, student engagement, or the overall student experience for a period of no less than 2 years. So that doesn't take into account the time of developing an activity and then perhaps 1 year of a rollout. It has to be 2 years of that sustained evidence to be able to really substantiate the claims for a citation or a teaching award. There's more detail in the guidelines. One other thing to note is that peer tutoring, like as an undergraduate student, doesn't count in that 5 years of teaching experience in the early career category. So if you're looking to apply for a citation award, you have to select a discipline category that fits best with your area of teaching. There's also multidisciplinary available and a nomination category. So in this case, we're looking in depth into the early career award. There are up to 100 AAUT citations awarded each year and a maximum of 6 nominations per institution. There's not always going to be 100 citations awarded. I think last year it might have been 52 that were awarded. So it really comes down to the discretion of the Citation Award Committee. For teaching awards, it's very similar, except so you select a discipline category and then you choose, if you fit the criteria, the early career award. And then there are up to 9 awards awards for teaching excellence available each year, and a maximum of 3 nominations per institution. And then the top ranked candidate, as deemed by the awards committee, is awarded the Australian University Teacher of the Year. So, in terms of the differences between these two award categories, so both you have to select as discipline nomination category. The real difference sits within that second row of that table, which is for a citation, you have to focus your nomination on one subcategory only. So it's approaches to teaching, development of curricula, effective assessment, or innovation and leadership. Whereas with a teaching award nomination, you have to approach all four. So you have to, I guess, be able to provide evidence for a very broad range of aspects of teaching, which is, I guess, why it's for that more comprehensive award. So you have to cover all four subcategories when you're responding to the assessment criteria. Both of the awards, you need to respond to all of those four assessment criteria. So positively impacting student learning, showing gaining recognition, showing creativity or innovation, and drawn on the scholarly literature. And you'll see there as well, there is a bit more detail required for documentation. So both require a nomination form, both require claims against the assessment criteria. For citations, you're limited to 4 pages. For teaching awards, you're limited to 8 pages. And obviously, you've got to cover all 4 of those approaches: development of curricula, assessment, and innovation. So it is a challenge. I'm sure the successful awardees will attest to that, that it's quite hard to, condense even into the 4 pages is a huge challenge, all of your fantastic work that you're doing. So both awards require 2 letters of reference, a digital photo, a team statement. If you're applying for a team award, we find that's less common, I suppose. With early career, you don't tend to get early career teams. We find most nominations are for individuals. For teaching awards, you'll need to submit as well a CV, a video, kind of attesting to the claims in your nomination and what makes you stand out as a nominee, and supporting materials. You can add up to 10 pages of supporting material in a PDF format or as a website URL that includes links and more detail. So that kind of gives you an overview, and you can start thinking about which of these award categories might be the best path for you, depending on your experience and how much evidence you feel you have. We're really delighted to have 3 guest speakers here today for this early career session. Firstly, we have Associate Professor Christian Moro, who's the Associate Dean External Engagement of the Faculty of Health Science at Medicine at Bond University. Christian was awarded an AAUT award for teaching excellence in the early career category back in 2018, and has continued on his engagement with AAUT as an assessor for a number of years. And last year he was a team lead assessor for the early career category, and he's kindly offered to share his insights with us today on what makes the nomination stand out. Secondly, we've got Dr. Mercedez Hinchcliff, who is the Director of Academic Programs, Marketing, Public Relations, Sports Marketing and Entrepreneurship at the University of Wollongong. She received a 2023 citation for outstanding contribution to student learning in the early career category. And finally, we've got Associate Professor Nic Connelly, who is the Assistant Associate Dean of the STEM College at RMIT University, who received a 2022 award for teaching excellence in the early career category. And Mercedes and Nick have joined us to share their experience on how they went about developing their nomination and provide some tips and advice for future applicants.
Thank you and welcome on the early career journey, I guess. So the next slide's just got that. It's one of the things, this is a really exciting category because we get a range of people from all different stages of life. See, it's early career to academia. It doesn't mean you haven't done a lot of stuff before. And I mean, everyone's post PhDs to come in from research labs. We've got entrepreneurs that come into the system, late in their careers, but they're still early career in teaching. And so it's an incredibly broad category, and it's something as well for the ICOs to think about. Are there people that wouldn't consider themselves eligible? They might be under these criteria. So it's exciting that the breadth and depth of people that we get, while also supporting a category for very young people who are straight out of their PhDs in the first few years of teaching. So The big thing is what Danny mentioned as well, was that it's very broad. So while the citation is relatively one of those subcategories, the teaching excellence looks at all four, which means it's really broad in the range of having to put into assessment, innovation or leadership, development of curricula and approaches, which is a lot to do, and it's quite hard, and it shows out well-rounded overall ability to teach, I guess, and work in education. But student learning is still the priority, and that matters. So the idea that we're looking for are interventions and teaching and things that you've done that actually assist the students. And one of the risks we see from the very start, people doing amazing things. I have a podcast that's getting this many views and a YouTube channel, but you don't add that extra line that says, well, how does it assist the student? What does it actually do? Why does this benefit the students? It benefits, I received this award and I met the governor and I have this. Yeah, but the panels that you're on, the groups that you're on, show that you're a great person and excellent, which is, we can make the link, but it's not that clear. So try to remember that everything you put forward about it, how does it help your students and what does it do? And in some cases, it's just that one extra sentence. In other cases, it's a bit harder, but think about it, because that's what we're interested in with this. It's showing that, it's not so much showing that you're an excellent person, but it's showing that the excellent things that you're doing are helping students learn. So that one there, and then how does it make you stand out? So these teaching awards at the teaching excellence level are very much, and even the citation, we know that you've got good TVALs because everyone does. We know that you've been put forward by your university. Especially at the higher levels, you'll have the dean or the executive dean or very high up people supporting you, which means we know that you're great. So how do you stand out amongst other great people? What are you doing that's different? What are you doing that's exciting? And think about that. So something like teaching evaluations are great, but everyone seems to have good teaching evaluations. So think about how can you stand out, whether that's drawing upon past examples of what you've done, whether it's drawing on innovative techniques and whatnot. So consider that. Now, on the next slide, the only thing then is to show that you're not going too rogue. So it's one of the things that we all like to do interventions, and I did this and I did that, and I changed this and changed that, and we do this in my class, but there's not that second step which shows, did it work? We can all go and do all kinds of things. Not rogue's probably a bit of a facetious word there, but it's more, are we doing things that are helping? And I'll give you a story later on about what I thought was great. I put all this time into it and it wasn't really helping. So highlighting endeavors, and we get this a lot where every paragraph is a new thing that the educator has put into practice, but there's not, once again, that second step. Did it actually work? How do we know it's good? All students were doing these hands-on activities. It sounds great in theory, but we need that next step. We can't just assume that it worked. And evidence is the next slide. Now, how do you show it work? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But think about that. What's the evidence that we have to show that it's not just you making changes, that it's you making changes that are good? And we've got there, one of the assessment criteria is drawn on scholar literature. Did you make the change based on literature? Did you make the change based on what was it? And then how did you evaluate it? So put it into that next step that it's actually good and actually helps. Or what are the issues with it? I've had great interventions that just didn't work, and you can own that as well, and that's a sign of good teaching. You can highlight an endeavor and say, my excellent teaching was to humble myself and stop doing this thing, and that's cool. It's one of the things we always focus on, this positive, positive, positive. You'll see lines of evaluations where they skip a few years. It's like, why did you skip it? Let us know. We're all going through that. Your assessors and the teams and the people with it, we're all going through this. We all have ups and downs and things that don't work. And part of teaching excellence isn't just to always hit that nail on the head every time. It's to reflect and evaluate and take things out. I went back to a didactic, boring teaching lesson because my students had trouble with, something like I was teaching English second language and I wanted to slow things down. It's really good that the deliberate actions that you're taking are based around your evaluation, your audience, your students. They don't need to be fun, exciting, hoorah each time. So yeah, it can be an innovation to take a step back. So the other one there, yeah, how are you doing it? Do your own research, draw on scholar literature, review feedback, change things and tweak because of feedback. And be careful. I mean, I use these words, we all do, but words like the students were more engaged. I mean, engagement is a whole form of research, behavioral, cognitive. There's different forms. And you say the students are more engaged and leave it at that is a little bit tricky. So use them because it is the right word to use in many cases, but just be aware that there are metrics that we can measure that. And so if it's just sort of I made this intervention and the students are more engaged, it's leaving a bit out. It enhanced learning. What does that mean? Tell us what you think that means. It was effective. What does that mean? So there's a lot of words that we see. And if you go through, you'll see applications have it in every paragraph. But what does it mean? What's effective and how did you evaluate and measure that? Once again, it's the important thing. So things you did. So it's probably, I'm getting a lot to that last little sentence at the end of everything is just saying, what do you mean? How did you evaluate? How is that metrics? And how does it help the student learning? Another one there is, are some interventions just activities you should be doing? We're all meant to be improving our classes every year. We're all meant to be reviewing the evaluations and making changes or tweaks or recommending things because of that. We're all meant to be responding to student feedback. So same again, what are you doing that's different? And it doesn't need to be jazzy, but just be aware that sometimes you'll see things that are like, I did this, I was part of a group that rewrote this. Yeah, but these are things that we do in our normal jobs. And so is this helping you stand out, or is there a way that you did it that helped you stand out amongst others? Was it fortunate that you were on those groups that always meet because you brought something new to the table? So try and think about that. What's normal? So not going too rogue, not just doing what you meant to do, somewhere in the middle where it helps and there's the evidence and the right words to explain it. What is the, what are some measurements? Evaluations are great, just show us how you use them. Students give me great evaluations, but what does that mean, and how does it sort of, how do you value it? And also tell us about the numbers. Put in some metrics in. Just saying I got a 9 out of 10. Well, how many students in the class? How many students did the actual evaluations? That matters as well. Just you're asked, does PD activities count as teaching? Yeah, absolutely. Just try and, so it's, student learning, but I guess in that context, the teachers are your students, or the students at the end of the game benefit from you teaching their educators. So mentorship of others that then helps students in the end. So just thinking about how it links. But you don't even need to be directly student facing to be an excellent teacher, because we're educators. There's a lot more curriculum development. I helped an educator change their slides in order to help their students. Just respond to one of the questions there. Thanks, Kashmira. Um, Live attendance. How many students are turning up? Are they leaving halfway through? I've seen metrics are great. Look, at the end of my session, half the class stay behind for Q&A time and communicate with each other. That's great. It doesn't happen often. So little things like that you don't realize. They don't all rush off. They don't have to. They have to. But that's one metric. Just because you're not getting good attendance doesn't mean you're a bad teacher, but it's one of the things that you can show and say, look, I've got students hang around after it. The number of interactions, the number of questions that come through in my sessions, students are comfortable to talk to me and ask the hard things. Interactions with online platform, you can track that on Canva, Blackboard. You can actually track how much they use it. So are they using it and encouraging them to? Sometimes it does involve nagging the students. And sometimes that's the thing that teaching excellence, sometimes kicking a kid out of your class because they're chatting is really good teaching if they're disturbing others. So it doesn't always have to be positive, but just that's something there. So interactions, if used on articles, if you've written articles and they're then used to help other teachers, well, that's something. I engage and I teach the community. I teach other people. I do it through, my works and my frameworks have been instrumental. So even your research, but not just saying, I have 1,000 citations. It is the citations are a way to show the community is impacted by my work, and the feedback I've received from that is that people are using these frameworks. So once again, that next step, it's about how the learning is not about you and your metrics. It's about how that helps. They help you show a difference and show evidence, but yeah. Peer review feedback and practice how you've changed it. Solving community problems. You can even say, look, I did the following based on literature, and why did I do it? Because of something else. Enhanced critical thinking and helps overload to package things in a way the students understood. Graduates are great. It's hard for early career because it's at 3 to 5 years, but if you have any graduates that come back and say, I use this in my workplace, that's fantastic. And that's good. If you're saying, I'm teaching workplace skills, then put in the feedback from the workplaces, the communities, even the graduates, if you can. You have got to go and seek that out. And this is one of the things that makes these award applications somewhat rewarding, is that you can go and seek out information to see was it working, and you hear great things. I never use that in my job. I didn't realize that. Well, what do you use? And we can go and tweak things because of that. So it's a really positive thing. Going out and seeking feedback from a broad group of people. Don't just do it for the award, do it to help yourself and to learn. Which is really, that's the next slide I talk about as well. So broad range of students who benefit, and staff, once again, all staff. Stewardship, yep, I've received 50 grand into my teaching. Yeah, but how did it help people? So it's once again not about you, it's about that next step. I received the funding and I stewarded this money in a way that helped the students, in a way that helped the staff, in a way that helped the faculty teach. So it's that next thing, less about how much you've got, but what you did with it, is what we're really looking for. It really helps. Benefits beyond the institution. Are others following your example? Are you also helping? Is your good teaching practices enhancing the quality of your tutors in their area and your PhD students or other people? How long will the interventions maintain benefits? If you can show that you've done an intervention that if you left will continue on, that's really powerful. We tend to have a lot of things like software and devices and activities that are linked to one person that when they leave, they vanish. So, mentoring and guiding others and putting into place long-term solutions are fantastic. And these are some examples. And then once again, ability to effectively adapt. We're still in that post-COVID change. Regulations are changing. You may have professional body teaching psychology and the accreditation changes. How did you lead the way to meet accreditation, which then helps graduate attributes? It helps the program stay accredited. So these are all things that can be really positive. So any changes, government, professional bodies, is evidence that you can use because we are always adapting and we're resilient and showing that you're a valued member of staff that's helping advance whatever throws at you, which is good. Oh, there's an example there just to remind. So, I mean, I spent about 5 years putting in a whole suite of VR activities and virtual reality. This is back in the day when VR was new and the students were loving it. It was engaging. But the problem was it wasn't enhancing learning. It was great. And it was, we use those terms engaging, but it actually didn't enhance learning. And this is when we look at it, like look at the citations, outstanding contributions to student learning. Are you contributing to student learning? You could argue that having things fun and engaging, but there is that gimmicky effect. So what I was doing was a lot of research into the sort of teaching practices that I was doing, and it humbled me a lot. It found that it wasn't doing what I thought it was doing. And I really had to tone back a lot of these interventions and things that I thought were great because they weren't enhancing learning. And that's just something else that would make it in now. I've got 5 years of it wasn't failed. I loved it and we had fun, but really, I use technology, I use devices, and I use software very sparingly now because I've done the research and that's why. Throwing tools and things at students and gimmicks to get them excited, if it doesn't enhance learning, is something that can um, I guess the excellence in teaching is toning back from that and saying, look, I want to do what matters. Every hour, every 10 minutes in my class is evidence based that you're learning. No matter what I want to do, it's what do the metrics show. So once again, you may hear really negative feedback from graduates. That can be a real positive, and that can go in there and say, I realized I was on the wrong track. I'd like to come back and repivot based on my evidence. So that's something, and that shows the value of these awards. While looking at what I thought was great, I found that it wasn't great, and now I've changed things. And so don't always just seek positive feedback, try and seek the negatives because that shows, a willingness to adapt, and that's good. You're not pushing your own agenda, then you're following the students, the learning, in a way that helps. So that's one of my little things that years of my career has been real. I still use it, but it's good. Now, the one thing is, I keep sort of getting to this, don't focus on the award. It's not, the award's great, but it takes a long time to write these. And so make sure you get alternative benefits out of it. If you don't get the award, was it worth that time put into it? And this is where getting evidence can really help for yourself. So seek out the evidence to help your own teaching. Use it for the award, but actually learn from it and use it. Help it, develop your CV, help it develop strategies to enhance your teaching and reflecting upon practice. So if you are or aren't successful, either way, all that work wasn't for nothing. You're actually using it. And it's, while pleasant to receive the awards, the real benefit is that journey, I guess, and learning to evaluate and critique your own work and get better from it. And then mentoring others. Well, look, when I did this, I learned the following. And yeah, that negative feedback, I had that as well. Here's how I can help you. So think about what you're doing in a way that I want to use this process to enhance my teaching, to collect the evaluation, collect the metrics that I need to learn from, as well as do the awards. So otherwise, it's too much work and it's a big risk to apply and then not get it and waste that time. So think about how can I use this process to develop myself and enhance myself, and that's what it's really good for. And we don't get that time to stop and reflect, and it does require that, which is really, really, really positive. So Any questions? Hope that wasn't too fast. Thank you.
That was great, Christian. Thank you. It was, yeah, very fascinating to hear, I guess, from the eyes of an assessor, that things don't have to be perfect. You're looking for that iterative adjustments to what you're doing in your teaching to really enhance what you're doing for these students for this learning. So now like to hand over to Dr. Mercedes Hinchcliff, who received a citation last year in creating an inclusive and exceptional learning experience for students through work integrated learning and community involvement. Mercedes, please feel free to share your experience in navigating this awards process.
All right, thank you very much, Danny, and thank you so much for having me. I thought that the advice that Christian just gave to be fantastic, coming off somebody who's just written the application myself. So it's it's very recent in my memory of having to write that application. And wow, Christian, I think you've hit everything of what we needed to do. So that was really good advice for anyone who's writing their application right now. For me, when I first got the tap on the shoulder from the university, I went, wow, this sounds great. Okay. And then it was overwhelming. So I don't know if some of you are feeling that way, but I think knowing where to start is a really good first step. And for me, knowing where to start was really about, and I'm going to jump down there, is understanding who I am as an educator and what's my story. So what I started to do is, okay, I want you to summarize yourself in 1 or 2 sentences. And I wrapped that up nicely. This is who I am, and this is what I want the assessors to know. And I wrote to that, besides the criteria, of course, but that just kept me going. And that was a really nice place to start. The next place really is to go to your own internal team. The university provided great support. They got me with mentors, and now I am a mentor as well to the next round of applicants. So reaching out to those former award winners is really great to see, especially if it's outside of your discipline or your faculty. Because sometimes when you reach out to somebody that's within your own faculty, they already know what you've done, and they might just read over things and say, okay, yeah, that makes sense because I know you as a person. So it's really great to reach out to former award winners, but outside your discipline or even outside of your university if you can, because really your story needs to be clear to somebody who's outside, who doesn't understand the same same words that you use or acronyms that you constantly use, and they don't know you. So it's really about yes, about telling that story. And lastly, before we get to the next slide, and I have lots of people coming to me saying, I just don't know if this is right for me, if I should be going for this award. Well, believe in yourself. You have already proven to yourself, like Christian has said, we know you're a good teacher. We know you deserve to be here. And it's not about whether or not you deserve it. It's about whether or not you can put it in words for other people to be able to, think the same. So definitely believe in yourself before you start this, that you are where you should be. And now we just need the evidence to back it up. All right, thank you for the next slide. So some of the maybe the challenges and tips that I found is we're very busy academics. We're teaching, we're researching. We just got off potentially getting an award with our own university, writing that promotion application. So tons of things that we're writing about, but finding time to write is always a struggle. So I literally would just schedule it in my diary, and I would say no to everything that day. So give yourselves a few hours, a few times a week. And the next thing really, and I think it goes back to a lot of what Christian was saying as well, is to measure your impact. Try not to be always so descriptive in what you're saying. Of course, you have to set the scene in your storytelling. You have to tell somebody what you did, and that's the descriptive part. But really try to get into that reflective part as well. So you're going to go back and you're going to say, why did I do this? What was the central reason that I wanted to do this instead of that? Why did I do something that no one else has done before? And what kind of impact did I have? I tend to tell my students, and I'll tell you the same, is to try to hit that third why. So when you first ask yourself, why did I do that? That's the surface level why. Why did I integrate work? Why did I have work integrated learning into my classroom? Oh, I did it because it was fun, and the pedagogy, it says that students really enjoy it and they're more engaged. There's the buzzword. But then I ask myself that second why. Why do you want your students engaged? Oh, well, the second why is the students will potentially learn more. Okay. back that up with evidence. But what's that third why? Why do you want your students to learn more? At the end of the day, you want them to be happier, better people, get better positions, get the promotions that they're after, etc. So if you can hit that third why in your writing, then the assessors will really be able to see who you are as an educator. So again, I've gone back to this a few times, is really writing to your audience. So you're writing to assessors, you're not writing to people internal to your university, which is something a little bit different than your own awards that you did. So really remember that, that when you're writing, that they need to understand exactly what you did. So my advice to you would be to have somebody look at it outside of your university, even a friend that's not even in academia. Can you say, hey, can you read this application and tell me if you understood what I was trying to do in my classroom? And I think that that'll be really helpful. So I think that was it at the end of the day. Tell your story was my last thing, but I guess going back to what Christian was saying, yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mercedes. And absolutely, I think regularly we receive feedback from assessors. They're not they don't know everything about your disciplinary. They might not even be aligned in that area. So having someone read it with no previous experience, make sure it's all crystal clear, it really is important, and make sure that they'll find all those acronyms that you've accidentally used because you think everybody knows what they mean. So thank you so much, Mercedes. That was really helpful insight. Next up, we've got Associate Professor Nic Connelly, who received the 2022 Award for Teaching Excellence in the Engineering category as an early career teacher. So, Nic, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. And Christian and Mercedes have done such a wonderful job. I think I'm probably going to be reiterating a lot of what they've said, but that's probably a good thing. So thank you so much for having me. It's a real honour to be here and to be asked to talk about this award. It certainly was a highlight in my career, getting this 2022 early teaching career. As you can probably tell from looking at me, I'm not like early career in academia. It is my second career. So after 30 years in aviation, I moved into academia in 2018. And I very quickly just found a real passion for the teaching. And I guess I started writing or submitting award applications within my college first. And, within 2 years, I'd got a Vice Chancellor's Contribution Award. So I guess my point being that it's like a slow process. It's over multiple years. You start with maybe a college, then you get the university, and then you get tapped to say, do you want to go to the national level? But all that time, years are ticking by, and this process, can be 3, 4, 5 years in the making in the end. So what I found is that, and you'll probably see by what my award was for, please keep in mind that I started writing this back in, 2018, 2019, when digital technology was pretty cool and exciting, and it probably doesn't sound that interesting right now because it's what everyone's doing. But back then it was probably authentic assessment, authentic teaching weren't really spoken about as much 5 or 6 years ago. And based on that, I really had a chance to introduce some cool things into my classroom. But I do take on board Christian's point is there's a real balance with the digital technology, not too much, and making sure that it hits a mark. So if you want to go on to the next slide, I'll just talk a little bit about my experience writing the nomination. So again, our other two great presenters have touched on a lot of this. But for me, the storytelling is really important, having a really clear story to tell and to take the reader on the journey. And again, what Mercedes just said is that you've got to write as if people have no knowledge, because it's going way outside of your local domain where people might understand what you're talking about. So really think about, when you're telling that story, why you did what you did and what evidence do you have for supporting that from a scholarly point of view is really important. But I love Mercedes also saying it's really important to be able to sum up what you're trying to do in a couple of sentences. And I did pick this tip up from when I was doing a mentoring session many years ago. Someone suggested you have that sentence stuck on your computer during the whole process, so you always go back and check, am I still within the boundaries of what I was trying to showcase? So I think that's really good. for me too, when I'm writing these, I actually put these subheadings in the paragraphs, and they come out later. It's what I did, what impact it had, and any recognition I might have got. And that recognition can come in lots of forms. Like it might be that you've had a chance to present it to other academics, or lots of different forms, or go to a conference and talk about it. But I always put in the what, the impact, and the recognition. So it's probably like the why, making sure you really dig down into those levels to not just say I did this because it was a great idea, but what impact did it have on the students, and what recognition because of that impact did it have, and how did that recognition also have impact. Addressing the criteria and making sure we understand what the assessors are looking for. And I think Christian summed it up beautifully, but, you know, making sure you really read the information that comes out about the different categories, and have a very clear understanding of what you're being asked to look at. If you can't find the answers to it in your written story, you probably need to go back and have another look. Evidence is obviously a really big thing, and we've touched on it a lot today. But I think sometimes you do need to get a bit creative. You know, we all have CES or GTS scores, and we can all put in student comments, but I think the assessors must get sick of just seeing that. So it's about, you know, using the analytics potentially behind Canvas or Moodle or whatever your school uses, going out and talking and getting evidence from industry about the impact your students are having, or from other academics on, you know, presentations you might have done. So it's really about going out and sourcing that. And it is a really great exercise to do. And I found the whole process such a rich learning for me personally. And I think along the way, you become a better teacher just by writing these applications. The impacts are obviously advocating for your philosophy. So if you really believe in what you're doing, you should be happy to go out and talk to others about it, and try and encourage. So a lot of the work I did with my aviation team was on sharing my learnings. I wasn't trying to keep it all myself. I tried to take some of my colleagues on the journey with me. And the reflection is just a wonderful experience. And I think when you sit down and actually think about what am I doing, why am I doing it, what impact is it having, and, you know, what am I getting from that impact, it's a really, really good exercise to know what you should keep doing and what potentially you should stop doing. If you want to go to the next slide. So some of the challenges, selling your success. I don't know about you guys, but it's quite an uncomfortable thing to do. Something in industry that you very rarely do. So you really have to try and get comfortable with that, selling what you've done well, how others have, you know, taken on what you've done. Seeking feedback can be another challenging thing, like actually going and asking people to tell you about how they think you're doing. Can be quite uncomfortable, but you have to do it, and you really have to start doing it early. This isn't something you can sort of wait till the last month or two and suddenly try and shoot out all these emails and ask for feedback. You want to be getting this over a long period of time, and people to see you in action to be able to respond to that. And again, the challenge is what is it that you're selling that is different and unique? So as Christian touched on, you know, all the teachers that go into these national awards are already great teachers in their own right. So how are you going to make yourself stand out in the crowd and show why you're just that little bit different than all these already amazing teachers? So it's really easy to try and write about everything you've ever done, but you've got to really capture what's important and write your story around those really important initiatives that have got you where you wanted to be. And I always asked myself when I'm writing something, so what? Why am I writing this? So what am I trying to say? So just continually question what you're doing to make sure that you're staying on track. Next slide, please. So just a few tips and advice for future nominees. I found tapping into the AAUT mentoring was fantastic. It's really good to get some fresh eyes on someone, from someone to question the work that you're doing, and to actually ask the so what questions, because sometimes I think you read it and it's in your head, you know why you're doing it, but you haven't articulated it very well. And these mentors have obviously been through the process. But again, as Mercedes said, it could be anyone, because if you want it to be a really good story, anyone should really be able to pick it up and read it. And also, these award applications, are quite meaty and involved. And if someone's kind enough to give you feedback and take the time, I think we should be really grateful and lucky that we get that feedback. So just advice, be very grateful if someone does give their valuable time. That was really my key tips, but great job by the Mercedes and Christian too. I think we had very similar take on the processes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nick. And I agree. It's we've had great insights from all three presenters today. So hopefully for those listening and who will be listening to the recording, we'll get some great takeaways from how to approach this process. And again, it's great to hear from the nominees, from the awardees as well, about the benefits of this whole process, gathering feedback, gathering data that can all go to support promotion applications for, your CV, or to keep refining your own teaching. That's fantastic. Do we have any questions for any of our presenters here today? We've done, this is the fourth session, well, including the ICO briefing. We've just finished the Early Career Award nomination. We've got 2 left over the next coming weeks. We've got the Neville Bonner Award nominations. So we're fortunate to have Professor Susan Page, who's the team leader for the Neville Bonner Award assessment process, and last year's Neville Bonner awardee, Associate Professor Kerry Bodle, who received the award last year. So she's going to share her insights as well. And then we've got David Sadler, the chair of the Program Awards Committee, leading the session on the 26th of June for Program Award nominations. Just a recap of where we're at in the process. We are now in that prepare nomination stage, gathering data, trying to pull it all together, building your narrative of nominations. The ICO, so the institutional contact officers at each institution, will have approximately 3 weeks to submit the nominations through our awards portal. So it's really important, if you aren't already in contact with your institutional contact officer, to get in touch with them. There is a contact list on our website. Please let us know if you're not sure who your ICO is. And then it goes on to a 3-stage assessment process. So individual assessment with our experienced assessors, then a collaborative assessment where they go in teams of 3 or 4 and moderate their assessments. Then it goes to the award committees, who are made up of very experienced DVCAs and DVCEs across the universities. And then the announcement will be made in February each year. It usually aligns with the University Solutions Summit or conference, whatever is on that year. So that's kind of where we're at in the process. You still have a bit of time before August to really take on board the advice provided by the speakers today. I've seen one question here. I've been a university lecturer for around 2 years, but I casually tutored in a university class as an honours student. Does this mean my 5-year period started in 27? As an honours student, I would say that counts more like as the undergraduate kind of peer tutoring type thing. Would you agree, Christian? I think it's more.
Usually it doesn't. It's usually post PhD. But what can happen is the ICOs will be in communication with Danny and that office there with Angeline, and so it's always been that any questions we've got are always answered straight away. So the universities, we encourage you to any questions, reach out to the AUT team, because even if just put it down and what it is, because there's clauses in there for career interruption.
That's right.
And so
it's best if you provide your details of a bit more detail about it. We'll be able to kind of determine whether you're eligible based on that. And as we said, there's interruptions, so there's gaps. It's about teaching, not about if you're doing research and not involved in that teaching activities.
Yeah, and teaching during your PhD or taking some classes during honours that's not a professional. So
no.
Usually wouldn't. But it's good conversation to have with them.
Alrighty, and so on this page, on this slide, we've got a link to that mentoring scheme. So many institutions have fantastic ICOs who are linking them with previous awardees. But if, in addition to those mentors, if you'd like another set of eyes, we do have many of our successful recipients from previous years on that list who have agreed to make themselves available. So we've got last year's Australian University Teacher of the Year, for example, and many others. So make use of those resources. That's on we've got the AAUT Universities Australia website, which is kind of more of the formal information, and then some more, there's a wealth of information on our AAUT network website as well, which has all the detail of the mentoring scheme. You can always email us. Angelina and I are happy to help. We do have a Twitter account that you can follow that we'll be posting one of the photos that we share from today's session, as well as Professor Ange Carbone. And she does some posts on LinkedIn as well about the awards. So moving on to and thank you so much for joining us, and to our three presenters. That was a really fascinating session. It was great to get your insights, and I'm sure it will be of great benefit for those who couldn't make the session. I know it's a public holiday in WA today, unfortunately, so I'm sure you'll have a few of those dialing in at a later time. So thank you all for joining us, and yeah, we hope to see some of you at our future information sessions as well. But thank you again to Christian, Mercedes and Nick. It was a pleasure to have you, and yeah, I've had a few great takeaways myself about the process. So thank you all.
Thank you for having us. Good luck to all the, good luck to everybody here, the nominees.